Following last week's more emotional new moon in Cancer, we see that this week there's this overall theme of this building and momentum, not just because we see that the light is now waxing and building on the moon's surface towards the full moon happening next week, but we also see some pretty benefic transits that are imbuing and sort of ushering in situations where we feel a lot more capable and ready to sort of tackle them and bring in our own unique approach to them. And seeing that Venus, the planet of love and relationships, will be entering the very outgoing sign of Leo later on this week, it's really making for a pretty social weekend. Hello friends, it's your girl Alina back for another week ahead astrology forecast video for the week of July 8th through the 14th. And before we dive in, you know what I'm gonna tell you. The Aura Line Retreat, second annual, happening in Costa Rica. Tickets are on sale now. So if you have any questions or you wanna learn more details about the retreat and you're really interested in going on it, then be sure to click the link in the description box to learn more. But with that said, let's dive in. First up, on Monday, July 8th, we see that the moon will currently be in the sign of Leo, though it'll be going into Virgo tomorrow on Tuesday, the next day. But on Monday, it makes it so it can feel a lot easier for us to express ourselves, really lean into having a bit more fun and bringing a bit more levity into things, especially at the start of the work week. There can be just this air of things feeling a bit lighter in that way. But we do see that on Monday, Venus in Cancer will be sextiling Uranus in Taurus. So when we see this type of transit, really leaning into the theme of things having a bit more levity with the moon in Leo, we might notice that there is levity around other people, that people are taking things a bit lighter, and you might notice that you either feel called to, or somebody's inviting you to, or it just happens that there's something fun going on at home. And that's because we see Venus, the planet of love and relationships, in the very home-centric sign of Cancer. Your home, your sanctuary, boundaries around your emotional self and self-preservation, protection in that way. It's having this very complementary sextile with Uranus, which is the planet of sudden changes and shifts, which is currently transiting Taurus, which Venus actually rules over Taurus. So it's a type of transit that can elicit this longing to shake things up, to spice things up a little bit, to add a little sprinkle to stuff. You know what I mean? Maybe it's like, well, I'm going to get myself a little extra treat this morning before I get to work, or I'm going to bring in to the office something, or maybe you come home and somebody's like, yo, I found the best movie. Those are the type of things that can happen under this type of transit. There can even be a potential of, you know, a financial windfall of finding some luck when it comes to your finances on this day, where you kind of get some news about something having to do with that. So that's pretty benefic. That's something good to look forward to. We also see that Mercury, currently transiting Leo, will be sextiling Jupiter in Gemini. Okay, so Jupiter is the planet of expansion, and it tends to magnify and expand with whatever planet that it's coming together with in a complementary way. And because this is a sextile, it is more conducive to supporting both planets' energies, right? And so it's amplifying the state of Mercury, which is currently in Leo, which is a very outgoing sign. And so it really increases the likelihood and really expands the likelihood of socializing, of learning new information, of maybe even hearing a bit of gossip. But information is really flowing. People are feeling a lot more open to have conversations for that reason. And with Jupiter also in the talkative sign of Gemini, Mercury rules Gemini, it makes for that type of situation. So don't be afraid to grab a coffee with somebody and just start talking. Don't be afraid to maybe set up some sort of brainstorming situation with people. Man, I miss that. There's only a handful of times when I was in school where I had brainstorming sessions with people, but it was like a mind meld. It was so cool. I have a lot of Gemini placements in my personal chart, so that is my love language, is just bouncing off of one another. And all that to say, that is the type of energy that Mercury sextiling Jupiter on Monday, July 8th will be imbuing. All right, next up on Tuesday, July 9th, we know that Tuesday is ruled by Mars, the planet of action, aggression, and energy and passion. So that makes Tuesday in general a great day for being in action, for maybe implementing sort of things that you planned out or you got clear on Monday and putting it to action. Kind of in alignment with sort of being in action, we see that the moon will be entering the sign of Virgo, the earth sign. And it makes it so not only on Tuesday, but the next few days that the moon will be in this sign, it makes it so there's a lot of energetic support when we do actions that are in alignment with the sign of Virgo. So think about kind of organizing things, creating some sort of routine, or getting back to the basics in terms of finding some level of balance in your life. So what comes to mind, maybe you've noticed that over the weekend or the last few days, like things have become a little bit disheveled or things have accumulated in your home. When the moon is in Virgo, it can make it so if we decide to sort of clean things up or kind of get things in order in one way or another, it feels a bit easier to do so. We also see that Pallas, an asteroid, will be going direct, ending its retrograde, currently in the sign of Scorpio. Now, Pallas is an asteroid similar to Chiron or Black Moon Lilith that is in our solar system. It's named after a Greek goddess, and it's known to rule over our critical thinking skills when it comes to conflict resolution. If I can kind of put it into context, if Aries energy is more about being reactionary and having a more like immediate response before kind of processing it, Pallas's energy, if you're in conflict, really intellectualizing and processing and planning how you're going to approach it from a more intellectual approach and kind of processing things in that, like, okay, this is happening. Why is this happening? And what's the motivation behind this person's perspective? And what's the motivation behind mine? Do I want to be right? Like kind of really intellectualizing it, really diving deeper into the deeper rooted undertones or root causes of the disagreements. It basically can elicit these situations where we might have disagreements or arguments, and it's a bit harder to approach those disagreements with the more balanced perspective of it. Being more curious about diving deeper into it to understand it. And so seeing that on Tuesday, it'll be going direct, now moving forward, it will make it so it feels a lot easier for us to pause and process and sort of explore the deeper rooted sort of energy and motivations behind disagreements or issues that we might come up against. Next up, on Wednesday, July 10th, first off, we know that Wednesday is ruled by Mercury. So it makes it so the state of Mercury is more strongly felt, but also taking action in alignment with the areas of our lives that Mercury rules over right now. We usually can experience a little bit more of energetic flow, if that makes sense, less roadblocks. So for example, reaching out to ask for help, learning, researching, offering information, offering guidance, responding to the call of somebody asking for advice. Things like that can be very energetically supported on this day. And we see that the sun in Cancer will actually be trining Saturn in Pisces on this day. So when we see this type of trine between the sun and Saturn, Saturn being the strict teacher and sun being this astral body, our central star that rules over our ego and our self-image and how we perceive ourselves and how we intentionally try to approach the world and present ourselves to the world, it can bring a lot of energetic support when it comes to asking for help and seeking knowledge and wisdom from people who have come before us. And it also just instills in us, in our sense of self, this feeling of being capable and of being open to being resourceful. Maybe we feel capable, but we also are like, but I have no idea how to do this. But we feel a lot more open-minded to being able to figure it out, to being able to learn, research, and find the answers, to seek the information that will help us get to where we want to go. So that is a really great thing about Wednesday. And I think that it's very conducive to the fact that this is a Mercury ruled day where information and conversations can flow a bit easier. So don't hesitate to reach out to people and ask for help. And if you notice that other people are reaching out, understand that it's likely tied to this Sun-Saturn transit. Next up on Thursday, July 11th, 7-Eleven. By the way, if you're in the States, this might also apply to other countries, but I'm not sure. 7-Eleven offers free Slurpees on 7-Eleven day. Fun fact, on July 11th, on Thursday, we know that Thursday is ruled by Jupiter, making it an inherently more benefic and lucky day. There can be a feeling of expansiveness more so on this day than any other. It just makes it an opportune day for seeking different ways to expand your awareness, because it's through expanding things and understanding where we might have some ignorance and learning that we can end up opening ourselves up to a lot of luck in a lot of different ways of like, wow, I didn't know I could do that. I had no idea how easy it was to do this one thing, but it's through seeking it if we're interested in sort of finding and tapping into that energy. But on Thursday, we see that the moon enters the diplomatic sign of Libra, which really instills in the next few days this air of romance in a lot of ways, but it can just make it so if you want to get romantic, if you want to socialize more, if you want to lean more into your closer relationships of the heart, but also if you want to kind of be more diplomatic and kind of figure out what's going on. Maybe there's something going on in some relationships and you kind of want to get clear on who's right, who's wrong, whether or not things are balanced, stuff like that. When the moon is in Libra, it can be very helpful to kind of do those things on that day. But on Thursday, we also see that Venus in Cancer will now be trining with Neptune, which is currently retrograde in Pisces. Now, despite Neptune being retrograde, this is still the type of transit that can create a lot of really dreamy, idealistic, romantic situations. It feels a lot easier if you have a few ideas of like romantic or thoughtful things that you'd like to do to elicit and share love with one another. It's a lot easier to kind of implement those things and bring those things out of the ether to reality, because Neptune's idealistic and imaginative energy is now coming together with Venus's romantic and relationship-centric influences on our lives. So there is that. But I will say that because Neptune is retrograde, there's a higher chance of hijinks, of potential issues. There's a higher chance that you or somebody else might pick up on this disconnect between what they had idealized, either with you or other people, or you with other people, or a disconnect in how they had planned things out. So I hope that that makes sense. But overall, I think this is an overall pretty benefic transit because it is a trine. But finally, following that transit, we see that Venus will be entering the sign of Leo, moving out of the sign of Cancer. And so when we see that Venus, the planet of love and relationships, enters the sign of Leo, it makes it so there can be this collective air of feeling a lot more confident in speaking what our heart is feeling and of expressing and articulating what's going on internally. But also, alternatively, there can be a higher chance of there being conversations of not feeling seen, because Leo is the sign of wanting to make sure that we are heard and not being afraid to also advocate for ourselves in a lot of ways. But Leo is also an advocate for others. And it's almost using their more inherent leadership skills that come a bit easier to them to serve others as well. So Venus being in Leo can be very benefic in a lot of ways. It can make it so a lot of us feel less intimidated or scared to kind of like set things up. Like, oh, let me connect you to, like, let me set things up. Or, you know, wanting to say, hey, you guys, let's all get together and enjoy the feeling of love and collectiveness. Next up on Friday, ruled by Venus, the planet of love and relationships, bringing already in this tone of romance and making it feel a bit easier to kind of tap into that energy on this day if you want to. We see that Venus in the sign of Leo will be opposing Pluto, which is currently transiting Aquarius. Now, because this is a more difficult opposition aspects generally are calling us to strike a balance between the two opposing energies. And it can tend to elicit situations where we are called to kind of find that balance or almost make a choice, where sometimes it kind of spotlights for us where we're leaning in one direction more than the other. And so considering that Venus will be in the sign of Leo, you know, a positive of that is that it feels a lot easier to advocate for our personal needs, especially when it comes to our love language and romance and matters of the heart. But on the other side of it, it can also manifest as being a little bit too selfish, of thinking a bit too much of ourselves. And when it's in opposition with Pluto, the planet that is of shadows and of hidden aspects of ourselves, of secrets and of intimacy, that's in Aquarius, which is more of an egalitarian and community-focused sign. It seems like on Friday, we might notice situations either involving us or others where there's this calling to strike a balance between the me versus the we, putting your personal things first versus putting others first, or striking a balance between the two because it's being brought to our attention in some way that it's leaning one way too much versus the other. So pay attention to that and understand that with Pluto being involved, a lot of it has to do with shadow things that are hidden, things that maybe we haven't wanted to face in a while, or things that might have been pent up that are finally kind of like coming up because of this higher tension opposition aspect. So that's something to be mindful of on Friday. Next up, on Saturday, July 13th, Saturday is ruled by Saturn, so it makes it so being a bit more responsible and doing things that are in alignment with promises that we've made, or you know those things that you know you need to do, that you know that it'll help you grow, but maybe it's a little bit outside of your comfort zone. Saturdays can be great days to sort of try those things out. Maybe you're trying a new sport or a new activity, you're learning to dance. Sometimes it can be lighter, but other times it can feel a bit hard. But Saturdays can be a great day for tapping into that. It can kind of imbue a bit more motivation for us. But on Saturday, we see that the moon in Libra will be sextiling with Mercury in Leo. So we got the moon, that being our inner world, our emotions, our inner dialogue, transiting Libra, this very romantic, egalitarian, balanced, relationship-focused sign. And it's coming together in a complementary sextile with Mercury, the planet of our thinking processes, information exchange, conversations, happening in the very outgoing sign of Libra, or transiting the very outgoing sign of Libra. So I'm sure you can guess the type of energy that this will imbue and the type of situations it will elicit. Feeling a lot more open to be social, feeling a lot more maybe excited and ready to have conversations with people. It can also show up as noticing that people at work or the people that you're around, they're a little bit more open to talking to you. They have something maybe they want to process. It could even show up as a friend saying like, hey, like I need to talk to you about my relationship with this other person. Like I need to, like somebody opening up to one another or something like that could show up. And it makes a lot of sense because we also see that the moon in Libra will be squaring with the sun, which is in Cancer. Now, this is the type of transit that can tend to sort of bring to the surface potential relationship issues or even like annoyances or things that have been kind of like nagging at us for a bit that we're like, oh, I can't take it or I don't know what to do, and wanting to talk about it and process it. So that's the moon squaring the sun in Cancer. And again, these transits with the moon, they're relatively fleeting because the moon moves so quickly around the sun and so hits all of these different transits pretty quickly. But on Saturday, there's a higher likelihood of that happening. So it can be a good day to have conversations with people if you personally have been feeling like there's something that's been nagging you for a while and maybe you know that there's someone you could talk to that could help you better understand the situation. And finally, on Sunday, we know that it's ruled by the sun, making the day really great for stepping into leadership positions if needed. You know, if somebody's like, hey, we need help with something, doing that, it can be very energetically supportive and even potentially lucky, but also doing things in alignment with being confident to express ourselves and to allow our creative energy to flow without filtering it too much or worrying too much about other people's perception. Sundays can be really great for that. But we also see on Sunday that the moon will be entering the sign of Scorpio, making Sunday and the next few days very supportive when it comes to introspective, deeper rooted psychological reflective work or exploration in that way. And also things like more transformational work. And what comes to mind is therapy, but also spiritual practices, even rituals that are helpful for even the subconscious mind in a lot of ways, helping us process things. Or maybe it's transformation of any kind. But we see that the moon in Scorpio will be squaring Venus in Leo, and it will also be squaring Pluto in Aquarius. Okay, so when we see that, it just increases the likelihood that there might be some arguments on Sunday. There might be some disagreements. We also might see that there might be some disagreements or a higher likelihood of being a little bit too hard on ourselves on Sunday. And I say that because when we see this type of transit, one, the moon in Scorpio already imbuing this focus, putting the spotlight on our deeper psychological motivations and deeper insights in that way. So wanting to dive deep, it's having this difficult time, this difficult square aspect with Venus, the planet of love and relationships. So these are involving relationships, and Pluto, the planet that rules over Scorpio because it rules over the shadow aspects of our lives, you know, definitely bringing in the likelihood that aspects of our deeper rooted shadows might come to the forefront in some way. And this might look like a partner bringing up a pattern of behavior of like, hey, you keep on doing this, like, and it really bothers me. What's going on? And you kind of connecting the dots of like, oh, I'm defensive because of this past trauma, or they're defensive because of this past trauma, and things kind of coming to the forefront. And this is the type of tension that a square aspect can bring that can actually result in feeling the pressure to the point that we're actually motivated to take action to fix it because we're so uncomfortable under this pressure. There's a higher chance of it feeling a bit difficult on Sunday, but understand that depending on how we choose to approach that discomfort or pressure is what will determine what will play out from this situation. Because though lunar transits are fleeting, as I've been saying, they still can have a ripple effect and they still can illuminate and put a spotlight on things that we didn't see before that still stay with us, that change our awareness of things. So be cognizant of that and have a bit of patience for yourself and others, especially if you notice that this manifests more so as inner dialogue of being a bit harder on ourselves or not knowing how to handle shadows coming to the surface in some way. Maybe it's through a trigger or something. But be sure to be softer on yourself and take time to pause and understand that these are human experiences. But I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up this video. If you made it to the end, I would love if you commented 3 blue heart emojis. With that said, I will leave you with my favorite quote, and that is, be gentle with yourself, because life is about the journey, not the destination. Okay, see you in the next one. Peace.